I'm writing this in one go because I don't think I have the time to properly organise it, and honestly, I don't think it matters anymore. If anyone reading this recognises the place I'm describing, please don't go there. I know how that sounds. I know every post like this says that. I used to roll my eyes at them too, but I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm trying to be precise. This happened at a place called Chult Hearths Nature Reserve, about an hour outside a small town. Small, controlled hiking area. Nothing extreme. Park trails, ranger station, basic visitor rules. The kind of place you go to, clear your head, take a few photos and leave before sunset. I went alone. That was the first mistake. The entrance didn't feel wrong at first. That's important. Nothing was screaming danger. Nothing looked abandoned or off. In fact, it looked maintained to a degree that felt slightly excessive. Clean gravel parking lot. Fresh paint on the sign. Trails clearly marked. The ranger at the booth barely looked at me when I arrived. He just handed me a laminated map and said, "Stick to the marked route. Don't deviate." I asked him what was off the trail. He hesitated for half a second too long, then said, "Things that don't correct properly." I laughed a little, assuming he meant wildlife risk or erosion zones or something like that. He didn't smile back. That should have been my cue to leave. Instead, I signed the register and started walking. The trail was perfect, not in a natural way. In a controlled way. Every few meters had a red marker nailed into a tree. The spacing was too even. The ground was too consistent. Even the sound felt managed. Birds calling at intervals that didn't overlap too chaotically. Wind moving in a steady pattern rather than random gusts. At the time, I told myself I was just being paranoid. I remember thinking, they'd probably just maintain this really well. But then I noticed something small. No insects, not fewer insects, none. Not a single mosquito, fly, beetle, nothing. That's the first moment I felt the atmosphere. Shift from well-kept to engineered, but I kept going. Because hikers always rationalise things when they're already committed. Around 40 minutes in, the sound changed, not abruptly, gradually. Bird calls faded out over maybe 10 seconds. Wind softened until it stopped completely. Even my footsteps started sounding dampened, like the forest was absorbing noise instead of reflecting it. I stopped walking. That's when I noticed the silence wasn't empty. It was structured. There was still sound, but it wasn't natural. It was spaced, controlled, like something had muted the environment selectively. I remember turning slowly in place, scanning the trees, trying to understand what I was hearing, and then I saw him, or I think I did. Between two trees, maybe 30 meters ahead, a figure standing still, not hidden, not crouched, just positioned in the open like he belonged there, tall, neutral posture. No movement at all. I blinked. He was gone. No rustle, no retreat, just removed from the frame. I told myself it was heat distortion or fatigue, but my body didn't accept that explanation, because my body had already started treating the forest like it was occupied. After that point, I became aware of footsteps, not always audible, not always consistent, but whenever I walked, there was a second rhythm that matched mine. At first I thought it was echo or delayed sound through terrain, but it kept adjusting perfectly. When I sped up, it sped up. When I stopped, it stopped. When I turned, it didn't lag behind. It was already aligned with me. I stopped again and turned. Sharply. Nothing behind me. Just trees. Stillness. But the synchronization didn't break. That was the moment I stopped thinking I was alone. About an hour in, the trail split. That wasn't on the map. Left path had a red marker, clearly official. Right path was unmarked. But the ground looked more travelled. Less overgrowth, smoother soil. Almost inviting in a way that made no sense for an unmarked route. I checked the map. Twice. Only one path should have been there. I stood there for maybe a minute just trying to reconcile it. Then I heard a voice. Close. Enough that I physically flinched. Don't. Take that one. I turned immediately. No one. But this wasn't like before. This wasn't ambiguous anymore. The voice had direction. It had proximity, and worse, it sounded calm, not threatening. Not urgent, just certain, like a recommendation from someone who already knew the outcome. I took the marked path. Because of course I did. After the fork, the environment began to subtly reorganize. That's the only way I can describe it. Markers that were previously behind me appeared further ahead. Distances between trees felt inconsistent, like spacing had been adjusted. The trail itself seemed to realign slightly whenever I wasn't looking, directly at it. At one point I looked back and realized something that made my stomach drop. The fork was gone, not obscured, gone. Just trees where it had been, as if the decision point had been removed. After I passed it, that's when I started walking faster, not running yet, just faster, because part of my brain was still trying to maintain the illusion that this was normal. I found the ranger station without expecting to. It wasn't on the map, it was just suddenly there, small. Wooden structure, too clean, too centred in a clearing that hadn't existed earlier. The door was open, no sound came from inside, no birds nearby, no wind, just complete auditory absence. I approached slowly and called out once, no. Answer inside was empty, desk perfectly arranged, radio sitting upright, a map pinned to the wall, but it wasn't the same map I was given. This one showed a much larger area, and more trails than I remembered. One trail was highlighted in faint red. It matched mine exactly. At the bottom of the map was a single word. Active. I stared at that for a long time. Then the radio clicked on by itself. A voice came through. Not distorted. Not static-filled, clean, professional. Calm. Deviation. Detected. Pause. Correction in progress. I stepped backward. Immediately, the radio continued. Return is not required. That's when I left. Fast, I didn't see him again. Until I stopped running. That was my mistake. Ran until my lungs forced me to slow down. Then I stopped in a clearing I didn't recognize, and there he was, standing. At the edge of the trees, not approaching, not hiding, just present, like he had always been there, and I was only now aligning with his position. This time I saw details. Not clothing in any memorable sense. Just neutral tones. Nothing reflective. Nothing distinct. His face wasn't masked or hidden. It just didn't register strongly. Like my brain refused to prioritize it. He looked at me like someone checking a system status. Then he spoke. You are adjusting slowly. I didn't answer. He nodded slightly, like that was acceptable, then added, That's normal. That word, normal, hit harder than anything else so far, because nothing about this was normal, but he was describing it like it was expected behaviour. When he started walking, the forest changed, not dramatically. Not visually obvious at first, but paths became clearer in front of him. Branches shifted subtly out of his way. Ground flattened in advance of his steps. He wasn't forcing anything. The environment was accommodating. Him, like he had priority over physical structure. I followed because I didn't have a better option, and because every time I tried to step away, something small but immediate stopped me. Fatigue, disorientation, a sudden certainty that the direction I chose was incorrect, not dangerous, incorrect. That distinction mattered, somehow. Eventually I tried to break pattern. I waited for a moment when he wasn't directly in my field of view and stepped off the trail into dense brush. I crouched behind a fallen tree, didn't move, didn't breathe, heavily, just stayed still, and for a few seconds, nothing happened. No sound change, no movement, no pursuit. Then, the forest shifted state, not visually, at first, auditorily. The wind stopped behaving. Naturally, ambient sound flattened into uniform distribution, like the entire space had been normalized. And then I heard his voice. Again, not closer, not farther, just present. Concealment is acceptable. Pause. It allows correction. That was the moment I understood something. Fundamental hiding wasn't evasion, it was input. The system wasn't trying to find me. It already knew where I was. Everything I did, movement, silent, deviation, was being observed and recorded as part of a me process. The forest wasn't a place, it was a controlled environment, responding to behavioural variation, and he wasn't a predator, he was the mechanism, enforcing consistency, walking correction function, human-shaped, but not human in purpose. I don't remember deciding to move. Again, at some point I just started walking, not because I wanted to, because staying still felt like it had been disallowed. Eventually I reached a boundary. Fence chain link industrial, perfectly maintained. Beyond it more forest, same forest. No transition, no exit, just repetition. He was behind me again, though I never saw him arrive, and when I turned, he was watching me at the exact distance where action and inaction feel identical. You reached containment threshold, he said. Pause. That is sufficient. I don't know what that means. I don't think I want to, because I left after that, or I think I did, but the problem is, I still notice things, small things, like decisions forming before I make them, like environments adjusting slightly when I enter them, like silence, arranging itself when I stop paying, attention to it. And sometimes, when everything is quiet enough, I hear it again, not a voice, just a status tone, followed by a single line that I can't explain, returned to acceptable range, and I don't know what part of that scares me more. The fact that I heard it, or the fact that nothing in me reacted like it was unexpected.